Well, welcome everybody. We are back here at welcome to timesquare.com. I'm with my man, Matt Medved. We've known each other for a number of years through mutual friends. We've swam in the same oceans. I think a couple of years ago, I moderated a panel with you down at NFT Miami. I kind of miss that.
That was fun. I remember Miami NFT week, some conferences are hit or miss, and I remember it was during like a really busy travel stretch for me. So I actually was thinking about, I had to go West Coast, East Coast, West Coast.
A lot.
And then I was like, you know what? It's all about showing up in the space. And so I showed up and I was actually really impressed. Full packed room. People were really excited. They were really interested. And it was more of like that tourist crowd versus the purist crowd. People who wanted to learn about the space. That's my favorite because I'm all about, bringing in the masses. So for me, I was really happy that I showed up that day.
I miss it, and we've stripped away, and we'll get to this in a little bit. We've stripped away a lot of the tourists for better or worse, and the pedestrians, the NFT craze kind of died. A lot of people got stuck, holding the bag, and I truly believe that the technology is still there. When you think about the blockchain and all that, it's just we got to get people on board. And with anything new, there's going to be the rug pullers, there's going to be the scammers, but then there's going to be the real builders and the real creators. And to me, that's exciting to see that they're still around. You seeing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at the history of technological adoption. There's always been technology as a tool. It can be used for good. It can be used for evil. In the early days, the Wild West frontiers, there are a lot of good-hearted builders, and there are also a lot of nefarious scammers, and that's just been the trajectory of all technologies. And so crypto's no different. But we're actually entering an unprecedented era of regulatory clarity and credibility. I remember buying my first Bitcoin in 2013. And if you had told me then that, it would be accepted at the highest levels of government and the financial system,
you never would have thought.
I would have never thought.
And that's in our time span.
Yeah.
And obviously we're in a very accelerated time span right now. But then you also have, if we look out the window one direction or another here, like BlackRock, JP Morgan, they're some of the biggest holders of crypto.
Yeah.
Specifically Bitcoin. So you got to think that these guys are onto something. I mean, even look at our president and some of the stuff that his businesses are holding on to too. There's a reason behind it. But let's hit the rewind button here. That's what the show is all about. Love to welcome my friend and your friend Matt Medved. He's had quite the interesting background there, and I'm curious too, if you don't mind me asking. What did your parents do for a living? Let's talk about your story here.
Yeah. No, I love the origin story.
Origin story, graphics, sound effect, like the Wayne's World one.
Exactly. My father is a neurologist in private practice, and that's the brain doctor for those who aren't, with the medical
brain
jargon.
Surgeons. Yes.
Yep. And then my mother is a nurse and genetic counselor, also a marathon runner, and they met on volunteer ambulance. So I come from a very medical family.
Was early on, was that the expectations that you were going to follow their footsteps, or were they embracing that you were going to go down your own path?
I feel
nurturing.
I feel really fortunate because my parents always supported me in all of my interests. As long as, I could go off and have a sustainable, successful, independent career, they were really supportive. And so there was never that expectation. And, from the early days, I gravitated towards more creative fields. I was very much into creative writing, poetry, prose, songwriting, all of that, music. And they always really supported me throughout all of those ventures.
And we can see the trajectory here too. But your arc is fascinating, right? Human rights research in Nigeria?
Yeah.
What was it like to traveling to some of these, you were taken out of your comfort zone. What was that like at an early age?
Yeah. So I worked for a conflict resolution NGO called Search for Common Ground. They're the largest global NGO for peace building and conflict resolution. And I did exactly what I thought I wanted to do at the time, which was human rights field research in a conflict zone. I was deployed to Jos, Nigeria, which is located in between the Muslim North and the Christian South. And it's often a flashpoint just because of its location and usually recurring cycles of violence around, especially elections, because it's like zero-sum game in terms of politics. It's like whoever wins the election tends to get all the resources, right? And we were on the ground there doing workshops with leaders in the space, whether it was religious leaders, women's group leaders, youth leaders, and helping people kind of build those bridges of understanding. But it was intense, man. There was a period where I was under there was fighting in the streets. Yeah. I was under pretty much house arrest in the NGO office. It was harrowing. And
but what did that bring? I mean, I would have to think that someone like yourself, I mean, that would excite me from a journalistic point of view, that you're
Absolutely.
in it, like you're fully in it, and like there's a real risk there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I got to see all of the sides of it. I got to do incredibly meaningful work interviewing victims specifically of security sector human rights abuse.
And what is that for anyone out there who's unfamiliar?
Yeah, so just to give I mean, it's very complicated, but very, very brief.
Let's mansplain it to
Yeah,
the
yeah, man.
audience.
Because of the security situation in Jos, there's obviously cycles of violence that tend to happen on interreligious lines. You also have Boko Haram, the terrorist group, which is not native to Jos. They come from the north and they would attack Jos. There were suicide bombings there. I remember when I asked the NGO how far away the location where I'd be staying was from like
Conflict area.
exactly, and they were like 2 blocks. There was a church like 2 blocks away that had
Isn't
been
there a
bombed.
Holiday Inn down the street I could stay at? Right? No.
But because of that, there is a heavy security sector presence. It's essentially like the military is deployed. Nigerian military is deployed in Jos to keep the peace. But they also are, it's military, and so they are also, there's corruption, there's human rights abuse, there's sexual abuse that goes on there as well. So that was what I was specifically researching there.
Your parents, I mean, obviously they're concerned, but
Definitely.
did they support that? Did they say, "Go forth, young man," or were they like, "Ah, Matt,
Let's
I don't know if this is the
yeah.
right move right now. Maybe you should start, covering, the local store opening over there."
Well, let's just say that I've given my excuse me. Let's just say I've given my parents a lot of gray hairs, right? But this wasn't the first time. At this point, I had also worked in South Africa. I had worked in Zimbabwe covering the elections there at a time when, the Zimbabwean government was rounding up journalists and deporting them. So I'd given my parents a taste of this before, but undoubtedly Nigeria was the longest I'd ever been in a situation like that, and certainly the most dangerous of the places that I worked in. But I will say they were supportive. And I did obviously go through my due diligence. I had a great professor for my conflict resolution studies who I ran the opportunity by, and she told me, look, like,
Here's
obviously,
the pros and cons. Here's a risk factor.
it's an NGO. They're not going to be able to like give you bodyguards or security.
Right.
She's like, but if you were my son, what they've put in place matches the industry standard. So it's really it's not, there's no negligence. Like they're doing everything that they can really do. It's really a matter of your own risk appetite. And I recognize that at that stage, the opportunity to do exactly what at that point I thought I wanted to do, which was be a human rights field researcher, because I wanted to go work at Human Rights Watch at that point. The opportunity was too good to pass up.
And I'd love if you could just share a little bit of those experiences, whether you were in, South Africa, wherever you were in the world, those kind of common themes of humanity, like being able to see it, like you saw people for who they are.
Yeah. So, it was really interesting because, and kind of like a full circle thing, during my early years, my high school years, and my early college years, I was very much drawn to music journalism. Obviously I come from a music background. I'm a musician myself, and I always loved music journalism. And so South Africa, my experience in South Africa, I worked for a daily afternoon newspaper called the Cape Argus down there in Cape Town, covering real issues like, service delivery riots in the townships and like the plight of street children. And like it opened up, the situation for Zimbabwean refugees in the city. It opened my eyes up to journalism as a means of creating social change and also shining a light on social issues that deserve to be brought to wider attention. And so that really did profoundly impact my career, even after I went back to music journalism.
You still felt it.
Yeah.
Did you feel when you were reporting from these areas too that I could do more? What could I do? Did you feel pulled to do something personally when you were down there, or are you able to stay in your journalistic lane and the responsibilities there, or is there a gray area?
It's a great question. I think there is to some degree a gray area. Obviously, I was covering these situations for a newspaper, so you had to be objective, you had to be fact driven, right, all of that. But I certainly knew, I sympathized with the plight of Zimbabwean refugees, and partly because some of them were my friends. My photographer, this great guy named Francis, he had slept on the streets of Cape Town until he got his papers. He had fled Harare after he had been caught taking photos for Reuters and like tortured and all of that. And so when I went up to
Crazy.
Harare to cover the elections, I stayed with his family. That's the only reason I wasn't deported, was that I wasn't staying in a hotel. But I obviously sympathized with his plight and with the plight there. So I was certainly covering, I think like any journalist, I was covering issues that were important to me, but I was doing it in obviously an objective way and in a journalistic, fact-finding, approach.
Do you miss it?
That side of it, not so much.
But more of the human side,
Yeah.
and the action,
Well-
and really being part of. Listen, music is a movement.
Yeah.
Technology is a movement. We'll get to all that in a little bit. But what you were doing there could really make a true difference in humanity. Yes, Web3 technology, music is all cool and fun and games, but that's the real shit there.
Yeah. And so the answer is like yes and no. I don't miss being in a conflict zone like 24/7.
At this stage of your life, you're cool.
Yeah. I recognize that I am someone with many passions who wears a lot of hats and has a lot of pursuits. And while that was incredibly important to me to do that and to contribute in that way, being down there was challenging for me to do justice to all of those other passions and pursuits. I mean, I was DJing on the radio there in Nigeria. I was befriending all the like radio DJs and such. So I was still doing my music stuff, but when there'd be violence and things like that, it would shut down. And I also recognize that there's many ways to make an impact. And so, even after that experience, I wrote grants for
USAID, right?
Yeah, USAID and State Department and the like, to help create programs down there to help.
So you really found a way to give back to it and make a
exactly.
difference. This is and this one kind of just came to the top of my head. I mean, I grew up listening to Paul Simon, and that's an influence from my mom. And I think about the album Graceland, which was influenced from Paul's time. I think he was down in apartheid South Africa too during that too. And you talk about DJing on the radio down there and your musical background. I mean, how much of that global sound, like how did that influence your musical repertoire from a DJ perspective and a musician?
In a major way, honestly. I remember being exposed to Afrobeat long before it sort of took over America.
It was a cool thing.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely cool in Africa, Ghana and like
it's called
Nigeria.
The beat, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
but like and so it was so interesting hearing that, and I was like, this is hot. Like I love this. Yeah,
it makes you move.
Yeah, and then I remember I was playing more traditional like electronic house, techno, dubstep even, and I remember like my friends. Shout out to DJ Stino and Verbs, Rhythm 93.7 FM, I think. But those guys are legends. Yeah. Those guys are legends. Down there, and they like big culture creators. And I remember playing like dubstep, and they're like, "What is this?" So it was a really cool like cultural exchange. And I also remember DJing on the radio there, and I was like just kind of flowing with it, having fun. And I was like, "How many people are we reaching?" And they were like 6 million. And I was like, because radio is the biggest way to reach anybody.
There wasn't broadband internet, right? They were able to tune in on their radios. Were you able to infuse like some of your style and beats there and introduce it to them?
Yeah.
Like, what is this? What is this, Matt?
Yeah, no, for sure. I got to like kind of branch out a bit and share that, and so that was really special. And I think it just, when I look back on it, it was just so clear to me that like even in these. Like even while I was doing this very important work, as you said, it's like this is the real stuff. Like this is, the impact-driven work.
Moving the needle.
I've always been a culture guy, right? I've always been drawn to music. I've always been drawn to sharing, to curation, and to connecting with different cultures, and to learning and sharing more.
When I look at your career, when I was doing the research here, there really is that common thread of curation, right? You're, dare I say, a tastemaker in certain ways, but you're a curator, and your finger's on the pulse of what's happening right now, right? And I truly think that's a common thread there. Was it tough for you? Let's talk about the pivot of going from reporting around the world social causes to moving more into the technology space. What was that pivot like, and what drew you in that direction?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because for me, I've always been a technologist. I've always been a techno-optimist. I've always embraced...
Techno-optimist.
I've always embraced new technology. Like a lot of people, their first reaction with new technology is fear, because a lot of people fear what they don't understand. I've always approached it with curiosity, and I've always been open-minded around technology, because in my eyes, technology has always driven storytelling forward, from the Gutenberg printing press to the invention of the internet, to mobile, to social, with the web, and now what we're seeing with Web3, and now we're seeing with AI. These are just new frontiers, and technology always wins. technology always wins. Like we never go backwards.
No,
right?
we're never going backwards. But I want to pause for a
Yeah.
moment and talk about another innovation. You moved over to music journalism, right?
Yeah,
And I want
yeah.
to talk about Billboard for a little bit. And
Yeah.
everyone's familiar with Billboard, with the charts and with the publication and everything. Did you have to convince them to start the
Yeah.
the division in charts there, or was that another logical progression because that was the vibe and what was happening and what culture was dictating?
Yeah, really good question. It was a bit of both.
Right.
So I was finishing up my graduate school with back-to-back exchange programs in Milan and Berlin. And I remember, and at the time I was also writing for dance music blogs. I was covering all of these different European festivals, et cetera. And I got this cold email from Carrie Mason, who was then Billboard's dance music writer. And we love Carrie.
Yeah. Known her since back in the Twilo days, right?
Yeah.
She was working with over at Vinyl with Teneglia too. That's when I first met her.
Yeah, she's a legend. And and I always say in an industry where it's often about who you know, my big break came from somebody I'd never met. And the most important email of my life went to junk mail. And I just happened to I was
Check
stuck,
your spam folder.
I was stuck on a bus in the Czech Republic with no internet, and I was like, well, let me just see what's in my
spam.
My
it's only
spam
I can look at right now.
And I found it, and she had been like, I love your writing.
Crazy.
Are you exclusive to these blogs? I'd love for to invite you to the opportunity to write for Billboard. And so as soon as I got signal, I wrote her back and I said, I'm so sorry, I'm just seeing this, but absolutely, I would love this opportunity. And I started writing pieces for Billboard, and then soon after, she left to go to SFX to run their marketing, and she asked me if I had interest in stepping into her role as the regular dance music writer. This was a freelance capacity, and then I was like, absolutely. I remember interviewing with Ty Comer, shout out to Ty, who also believed in me, who was then editor of .com. And after kind of running all these ideas by him, I said, look, one last thing. There's this kid in Norway. His name's Kygo, and I think he's going to be a star. Can I write a feature on him? And he was like, yeah, if you believe in him. At that point, he had never played outside Norway. And that was my first called shot, was Kygo wrote the big Billboard feature, and I did that whole rise with him. We went to Tomorrowland together. We went to so many festivals, and met so many artists and important industry contacts along the way. And it became clear to me that dance music, was taking over America, and that there were most of the serious publications were not giving it the time of day in America. In Europe and in the UK, you have Mixmag, you got DJ Mag,
it was ubiquitous, and they set the trend on that long time ago.
It was all music blogs at that time, because Rolling Stone wasn't touching it. Pitchfork was turning up their nose at it. And what was interesting was Billboard. Obviously, Kerry and Zell McCarthy also did great work there. They were doing it, but they were still freelance. They weren't full time focused on building a brand for dance music for Billboard. So it took me, I came back to New York, and it took some convincing. I put together a proposal for Billboard Dance, and, the SVP of content, Mike Bruno at the time, ran it by the higher ups, and luckily we were able to make it happen. But there was, when I arrived, Billboard was still run by old rock music heads who did not believe in dance music and were constantly asking me in every morning meeting, when is the EDM bubble going to burst? To which I would respond to them. I would always come armed with stats. Right. I would respond to them. Hey, Craig, when is a rock music festival going to sell 300,000 tickets over 3 days? Until they stopped asking me that question.
When you look at the hardcore facts and the culture migrates, right?
Yeah.
The cool stuff happens over there, and then, it migrates over here too. So I want to dig in a little bit to your musical influences as a DJ. If you had your Mount Rushmore of your 4 DJs in front of you, or producers, right?
Okay.
Who's your Mount Rushmore? That wasn't even on my list.
Ooh, that's an interesting one. It's interesting because my tastes are very wide and very far ranging.
Let's keep it in the electronically produced, non-physical instrumental category. That's a new category. And now the award for the both.
Well, it's also interesting because we're talking about DJs, we're talking about producers,
you
right?
You can combine the two.
Okay. So here's the thing. I'm just going to throw out some because I know, and I'm sure I'll miss some. But I remember, what got me into dance music in college was listening to trance music. And so guys like Tiesto and Paul Oakenfold were legends. In Search of Sunrise. That was the one.
I mean, they're a little fast now when you listen back to them.
Yeah.
Right, at times, but when you break it down, we would listen on repeat 1,000 times.
100%.
I mean, CDs and
so I'd be remiss not to mention them because they were just the OGs who really, I learned about dance music and dance music culture through their music and their shows. And then you have the whole new generation of producers, of musicians. You have the Aviciis of the world. Avicii was obviously he's somebody who I met, who I did a lot of work with in terms of like premiering his music, and unfortunately also had to play a role in reporting on his passing.
Let's pause on Avicii for a moment.
Yeah.
Did you have a chance to see the documentary?
I did.
It was so eye-opening to me. He was just a kid in his bedroom,
Yeah.
making music.
Yeah.
And someone with an ear, and the names are missed, and I'll go back and edit that in. Like, this kid could hear the beats and rhythms, and he could create them. He could create them too, and they recognized a talent there. But you go back, and it's so tragic because they really just. It was such an expedited timeline of success. I'm doing air quotes for anyone who's listening to this. And he couldn't handle it. And he couldn't handle the pressure and the pace of it too. And you see the human side of success. I mean, you look at somebody now like a John Summit who rose very quickly, from those ranks too. And you think about the mental health of it, where like it's not all glitz and glam being that rock star. From your point of view, I mean, you had a front row seat to these folks. Like, did you with Avicii, looking back on it now, knowing what you know, did you see that side of it? Did you see the see the stress and the and one of our mutual Malik was managing for a while, and like I talked to him a little bit about that too, and these are humans. These are not just like behind every rock star musician is a real person going through their own shit and struggles.
Well, 100%. And, Avicii is really in many ways the poster child of that generation and a trend, which was the rise of the bedroom producer. You remember Avicii, back in the day, you'd have these DJs who had their residencies. Tenaglia had his residency, Tiesto had his residencies. They were DJs first and foremost. Right. They might make some music. They might work with some producers to make music. But the rise of the bedroom producer, that was caused by obviously the advent of the internet.
Right, technology, being able to create it on your laptop.
Democratization of digital technology. Right. All of a sudden, any kid with an internet connection and a working knowledge of BitTorrent could have industry standard software. And so you had guys like Avicii, you had guys like Martin Garrix who rose to fame because of the music that they were creating in their bedrooms. And the demand was around their music, the popularity was around their music. And for many of them, it's like they had to learn to DJ because now they
created tracks, but they didn't know how to mix other people's stuff into it.
Kygo's the same way. Kygo's a pianist. He had to learn to DJ once there was demand because of his music. And it's a real different mentality for many producers versus DJs. Right. You look at a guy like Steve Aoki. He's a DJ. I know he produces. He knows his way around a DAW. He does that stuff.
Right,
but he's a DJ first.
And
he knows how to throw a show. Yeah,
those are entertainers.
He's an entertainer.
Right.
He knows how to throw a great party. He knows how to hype up the crowd. Yeah, and so that's a different mentality than for many producers. And Avicii, obviously, if you watch that documentary, you'll see he had a lot of anxiety around performance, and he offset that by drinking, and led to a lot of health complications and that whole that whole struggle. And that was because you're basically telling this kid who his art form was production. And all of a sudden, he's going around DJing all over the world in front of huge crowds. Some people make that jump well. Not everybody. And not everybody.
It's going to a performer right on the stage, too. I don't know if there was a specific piece in there, too, when he created what he thought was a really interesting kind of crossover with rock, and then it was an Ultra Music Festival, and it completely bombed. And that's really
country.
It was country, and it threw him off in a terrible direction. I was like, first of all, I didn't know that part of it. Yeah. Right. And I took it. We were sitting in the theater. We watched it at the film festival here in the city, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, that is just horrific. Like, you go up there, you have this idea as a creator. Yeah. Like, you have this idea in your head, I created something. They're going to embrace it because they love me. And then it was a management of expectations, and it just bombed, and that threw him down the rabbit hole.
But ultimately, he had the last laugh because "Wake Me Up" became a massive global hit, and
the biggest maybe of all time.
Exactly, yeah, one of the biggest dance hits of all time, absolutely. And so he saw something that crowd wasn't ready for. He was ahead of his time.
Way too ahead of his time.
And it was interesting. We broke the news of his passing at Billboard, which was a really tough day, and sort of like a sacred responsibility to ensure his story was told right.
You had to do it right. You owed it to the community. You owed it to him to do the obituary right. So you said something interesting. I want to double back on. You're being a tech optimist too, and the advent of and the rise of AI, and literally, like, even on the train here, I wrote a rap song with ChatGPT, and I had to prompt it and everything because I was just fuck around and find out, which is one of my favorite things. But is it there's two sides to look at it, right? Like if you could be a purist and say, no, you have to really you have to be classically trained musician. You have to know how to be a keyboarder and pianist versus these kids. They're creating in a different way, and their instrument is their fingers and words to
Absolutely.
prompt things. Are you a purist in that regards? Or are you
No.
embracing it?
I'm embracing it. I've always been embracing
Right.
it, and partly because of my own journey. I've always been a by ear musician. So for me, I hear
You
music.
can't read music.
I can read it here and there,
Right,
but
but
like
that's not how you were that's not how you were
that's
trained.
not how I.
Right.
Yeah,
You weren't reading sheet music, but you could
Exactly.
hear it by ear, and then you could figure it out. And
exactly.
I don't discredit
But
that.
it was not like, instruments were not the best way for me to get my music out of my head, and I found it really challenging for many years because I would hear notes in my head. I knew they were in the right key. I could hum them, I could sing them, but I couldn't tell you what those notes were, and I couldn't, and I would have to like laboriously on a keyboard
Figure out.
what they were. Then Ableton Live introduced audio to MIDI, huge unlock for me. I was able to sing the notes in my head into the computer, and it would make MIDI notes. All of a sudden, I could suddenly work.
You moved your thoughts
Yeah.
from your head to the keyboard to
Exactly.
the output of the music.
That's right.
Right.
And
So it was really that unlock that was really the intermediary there that technology allowed for.
Exactly.
But it unlocked the creativity in you.
Yeah.
And who's to say that that's not right?
that's right.
Is Beethoven rolling in his grave? I don't think he gives a fuck. Like that's not what's happening.
Exactly. All musical instruments are tools. Some of them have more history than others,
Right.
but they're all about enabling creatives to get their creativity out of their heads and into the world. And so, to me, look, electronic musicians were obviously doubted and disparaged for not being real musicians for many years because they didn't understand the musical process that was going on there. The same thing is now happening with AI music, AI generated music, and there is a real unlock for non-traditional musicians to be able to now get their ideas out of their heads and create industry standard tracks or creations or demos around that.
And I would say this is a very logical transition into talking about digital art and NFTs and everything too. It's the same concept where I may not be able to draw or paint or use watercolors or acrylics, but I'm very talented with a keyboard and I have thoughts in my head and I know how to translate my thoughts creatively. We're in those early stages and still now to the extent where you have a divide of like true physical artists versus a digital artist, but it's very similar. Do you remember what was that first moment or like a time and place when you started to see digital art out there and you're like, this is definitely the next thing?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, I remember, my good friend Justin Blau, who you may know, he's obviously a DJ, producer, also very early on the music NFT side of thing. And I remember seeing, he and I have been friends from the, even predating the Billboard days, the blog days, back when he was like the mashup DJ. And we always would check in with each other on like technology during that rise. I remember he bought me my first Ledger in like 2016 or 2017 at a Grammys party when we both found out that we were dabbling in crypto.
Right.
And
gotta
so
have this. It's all on your keys.
Very important. Yeah, not your keys, not your coins. But so I remember seeing what he was doing with a visual artist named Slime Sunday. And I was seeing how they were selling digital works that were, these kind of short form music loops with digital,
Like
visuals.
visualizations, right?
And I said, this is going to change everything. This is digital ownership. This is provable digital ownership in a way that didn't exist before. And what that opened me up to was this whole new world of digital artists who previously had to make a living off client work, who are now suddenly stepping into their own as artists who could actually build a collector base.
Right. I think let's pause on that for a second there too, because you think about just artists in general, right? And there's really only the top couple of 1% even that really quote unquote kill it and make a ton there. But now it's with the technology, the artists, whether digital or or music, they're able to own and monetize their creative in a way that was never seen possible.
Yes.
Right. The democratization of ownership of creativity.
Yeah.
And that, for me, I was like, that's a big one. Changing the game. So if you look back at your roots, you have a very deep understanding of how the music industry works. This was upsetting a lot of the old school folks right there, right?
As it does, right? As it does.
The old guard's got to go.
I mean, I remember, so kind of when I look at that crypto intersection of crypto and culture, I bought my first Bitcoin in 2013. I was the top signal of that market. I bought the exact top,
What'd you get in that?
$900, and then it crashed to 250 like the next week.
So I think I might have shared this story before. we swim in similar circles where
Mhm.
we're in the know from an early adopter standpoint. And I remember it was 2014, and I heard word about this thing called Bitcoin, and I started to go down the rabbit hole a little bit. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go buy some. And I forgot what the price is, and I could price check it. And I signed up for my first Coinbase account. It was a
Yeah.
new thing, but I wasn't able to transfer money.
Mhm.
I couldn't do it the way we do now.
Wasn't easy
It wasn't
then.
easy.
Yeah.
And I remember I had to somehow wire the money over to them, and my fucking lazy ass decided, you know what? I'm just not going to do it.
Many such cases.
And I told this story to my wife, and she
Yeah.
literally punched me in the dick. She's like, she's like, do you have any idea? She's like, we could have had colleges paid for and all that too. I'm like, but here's the thing, babe. I've always had diamond hands, and there's zero doubt that if I got
You would've
in
sold it.
and $900, I was
Yeah.
going to.
I still hold that Bitcoin, that one. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you have it, and
I wish I bought a lot more.
right.
You know?
and now it kind of got me off on that path too. But then we get down the path of NFTs, and we start to go down to that boom craze in 2021
Yeah.
and everything. And did you kind of see some of the writing on the wall that this thing was going to like maybe blow up too big, and there was going to be
Yeah.
people kind of quote unquote holding the bag?
So the way I also saw it, kind of the evolution
Let's
there.
get a little history lesson
Yeah,
for
yeah.
everyone out there. You're a historian.
Yeah. So 2016, 2017 was the rise of Ethereum. I was at Billboard. I was the only person at Billboard who owned crypto or understood it at all. So I started doing some coverage around like DJs trading crypto. And I remember that article popped on Twitter because it was like the first time that Billboard magazine, this like vaunted,
Publication,
industry,
right?
Yeah, had acknowledged Bitcoin. So all the Bitcoin maxis were going crazy, and I was like, I kind of wish it had been for a more serious article, but I recognized the community around it. Because when I was looking at Bitcoin in 2013, it was like this crazy backwater Reddit thing. And now I was seeing that there was this
More mainstream.
And I started, really looking at, I spoke at South by, I talked a lot about like the intersection of music and blockchain and how can this empower creators? Is there a play with royalties and publishing? Everything was too early then. And so what was interesting was in 2020, 2021, when, Blau pulls me down the NFT rabbit hole, for me, all the light bulbs went off because I was like, this is the technology I've believed in for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Finally disrupting fields I'm actually passionate about, like music,
Culture.
culture. Because I'm a culture guy. I'm not a finance guy. And it with the potential to empower creators. So I was like, I am all in on this. But I remember the early conversations with Justin, and he even felt, especially with the PFP projects, he was like this feeling like the ICOs all over again.
Right? Did you? Was there ever a point, Matt, where you felt you were drinking the Kool-Aid? Like, were you able to take a step back and because listen, we were all in it. We were in it. We were in it to win it.
Totally.
Right. We were in it to win it. There was the excitement of it. There was the thought of the financial gain of all this too. We were all drinking the Kool-Aid, man.
Yeah, and look,
not all of us had that perspective that you do, where we could step back and put it into the context of technology and evolution of technology and be like, wait a minute, let's slow down. Let's be a little bit more pragmatic here. Like, we all got very excited very quickly.
Euphoria is a hell of a drug,
right? Hell of a drug.
And we've all been through it, and we'll probably be through it again.
It's gonna be another cycle of euphoria.
Yeah. And obviously you learn from those cycles, but like that felt, and in many ways, I think we will look back on it still and say it was like the forefront of a new digital revolution that was going to change absolutely everything. And I still think digital ownership will change everything. It's just not going to happen as fast as we thought, and we're never going to see another 2021.
No, it was a moment in time too. And even if you look at my thing with the real like groundbreaking watershed moment was Christie's auctioning off Beeple's piece.
That was
60 million. Like, was it more than that? It was
69.3 million.
That for me, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, that made NFTs a household name.
Yeah.
Like, everybody was like, my phone was ringing off the charts. And everybody who thought I was crazy because I had left, a cushy gig at Modern Luxury. After Billboard, I ran Spin Magazine as editor-in-chief.
Oh, we passed right over that segment.
It's okay. We're in the good stuff now.
Yeah, it's a good stuff.
And then I was running content at Modern Luxury, very cushy media job, and people thought I was insane to leave it to start an NFT media startup. But those same people, after the Beeple sale, were like, wait a minute, you were onto something.
But here's the thing, and at the core of this show, we talk about all the time is the career journeys too, and thinking about the pivot. But I don't think this is a pivot. I think you knew it in your hearts because you've always been following your gut based on cultural data and direction.
Mm-hmm.
So that had to be a logical move for you, right? Did you doubt it at any point? You're like, shit, what am I giving up here? Was there that
it's
doubt?
well, look, Now Media, then NFT Now Media was my first company that I founded. I was first time founder.
It's the first time working for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously, I was the founder of Billboard Dance. I ran
It was part of
Spin.
a
Yeah, but you're
corporation.
still part of it. Yeah, and so for me, like that jump is obviously significant. But you know what? I really I felt the winds of change at my back. I believed so much and still believe in the power of digital ownership and digital digital assets. And so for me, I knew I couldn't stay on the sidelines. And so was it scary? Sure,
Yeah.
making that kind of leap is scary, but that's the kind of jump that leads to growth.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, listen, it's cliche that you have to step out of your comfort zone.
Do
But you and what the team built there was groundbreaking because it
thank
added
you.
legitimacy to it. It was a resource, right? When I was starting to learn too, and that's when we first connected. I was like, you were the guy I wanted to listen to
Thank you.
because you came at it from a pragmatic and experience, and you were also bringing the other side of it too. Like here's the good, the bad, and the ugly of it too. Here's what's happening. Here's some of the risk factors as well there too. But you were also what I love so much about is you were highlighting folks that have never been on the stage before, right?
Mm,
You were bringing to light artists and creators and concepts that it was their time to shine,
yeah,
right? And that's
absolutely.
what this whole world created was new stars and new canvases, and it also was a medium for traditional artists to get heard and also deflect back and open up doors to their traditional art.
Yeah.
So many interesting things there. But then there was a dark side of it too. How did you and NFT Now back then manage the dark side and manage still talking about it as well too? Because it had to be important to report on it.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, look, like I said, technology always has, its booms and its busts, right? You can go back to .com. You can go. You're looking. We're in the middle of an AI bubble right now as well. But again, those bubbles, those booms, and those busts have always produced very important companies and very important technologies that have gone on to define the
Mhm.
future. So but it's wild to ride the roller coaster of that. I've now seen all sides. Well, maybe not all sides, but I've seen the two kind of sides of the entrepreneurial journey of being strapped to a rocket ship where what you're working on is the hottest thing, and then the moment when the music stops and the market shifts
Mhm.
and you are suddenly tightening the belt, you are gritting through it. Sometimes you're chewing glass and staring into the void,
Right.
but
Yeah. And
it's
reputations are on the line
yeah,
and egos on the line there too. So I want to go back and talk a little bit about starting this company.
yeah,
Right. For anyone out there building a company, right, there's going to be the good, the bad, and the ugly there too. You were riding that. You guys were strapped on. You were at the right place at the right time. The
yeah.
moment was right in culture. You had the background. You had the network to make this thing happen, and it went off the ground. But what was that first moment in this space where you got punched in the face?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's important that we talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, look, like the FTX collapse was a big deal. That Terra Luna FTX, that market collapse.
The name we shall not say.
Yeah, yeah. That it was interesting because that I mean, we so right after that we had our gateway event in 2022 in Miami,
Pretty cool.
which was super ambitious. That year we took over a whole city block.
Yeah, it was like 4 city blocks.
Yeah, and
It was awesome. It was awesome.
The Flagler district. We had partners like Porsche. We had partners like Nike. We had
I
partners
still
like
have the little
Instagram.
Porsche. I still
yeah.
have it.
Yeah,
It's 3D
same.
printed
The 911. Yeah,
and the shirt
911.
and the shirts with the
Yeah.
RFID tags, and that was
And
super cool.
it was kind of this interesting dichotomy because obviously those contracts had been signed, everything had been figured out prior to that crash. But at a time when everybody was pulling back, we were like dropping an even bigger flag. And so it wasn't so much that experience, but it felt like there was this kind of weird disconnect and between the ambition of what we were doing and the market sentiment. And it was 2023 as we continued to ride the wave of that ambition, doing gateways in Korea, doing another ambitious gateway in Miami with Faina
Right.
Forum, where we also recognized that the fundraising environment had changed, that
Yeah, the VC world changed.
things had dried up. I mean, the end of Q4 of 2023, when we were actively raising, is now looked back on as one of the toughest quarters in the
Yes.
history of venture capital. And so I would say that when we recognized that we weren't going to be able to raise what we needed to in that time frame, and we were going to have to, get rid of some really great staff members,
That'd be tough.
and do layoffs. That was the toughest thing for me, was parting ways with really, really talented, incredible, employees who had helped us get where we got.
Do you think that you maintain a very high quality professional level of journalism too? Do you think that world was ready for it, and they wanted it and craved it?
The
In
traditional
the
journalism
Web3,
world,
correct?
was the Web3
No,
world
was the
ready
Web3
for?
world ready for what you guys are bringing to the table?
Yeah, I think so. Because, and that's really what helped us differentiate ourselves, was the authenticity and, the journalistic ethos that I brought to the table, and that the whole team, the
It was
authenticity.
something you wanted to read.
Yeah. And, we in an industry that was where people often prioritize short-term revenue versus long-term credibility, we didn't take, we were offered so much money from these like really suspect projects,
Right.
these adjective animals, these rug pulls, these scams.
Adjective animals.
Yeah. And we turned that all down because our credibility was more important.
Right.
The first brand partners we said yes to were Coinbase and United Masters. And that's like the bar that we set.
Right.
And that
These
was
established,
exactly
reputable companies.
And that's why Christie's worked with us, a 270-something-year-old auction house partnering with a 6-month-old startup. That put us on the map for the traditional art world. That's why we had Porsche. That's why we had Instagram.
What was that conversation like in the boardroom?
It was really interesting.
Let's pull back the curtain on that one. Like, you really had to get in there and convince them.
We had to get in there, but I will also say that luckily, we had people on the inside who understood it. We had Noah Davis and Nicole Sales-Giles,
Right.
who had helped steer the Beeple sale. And at that point, inside Christie's, they were golden because they had delivered such a monumental sale. So that they said, hey, look, this Web3 media company, NFT Now at the time, they're worth partnering with. They're the standard in the space. They listened, and we were able to cut through a lot of bureaucracy that I think would have otherwise prevented that, and do some incredible events together. The Gateways in Miami, I think, were they opened the traditional art world to the space.
And it was also a great experiential event too, being in the first one in downtown Miami.
Yeah,
that was I've been to Miami a million times. I never spent a minute down there.
Yeah.
And you reinvented the space with a modern edge to it. That was incredible. The one in the one activation in the bank, I remember, was really cool. And you were able to bring a modern approach in a old school traditional setting to display the work, to display the digital work, and it was amazing, man. That was an incredible vision.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the pivot and dropping the NFT part of Now into Now Media too. Is that simply just following the trend in the current pace that NFTs are not in vogue anymore?
No, I think it's more than that. To me, I think one of the things we recognize is that the movement of digital culture is bigger than any medium. I'm a music guy, right? So like the analogy I often use is the MP3. I remember when MP3 players came on the scene, everybody was talking about MP3s. We still use MP3s every day, but nobody talks about them, right?
Right.
It's digital music is much, it's behind there. Yeah. Digital music is much bigger than any file format.
I remember my first iPod. It was the coolest thing ever.
Totally.
I had like 100 songs on there. I had to figure out how to move it from Napster to my iTunes. Like, what is this
100%.
iTunes thing I'm working with there too? But behind it is the actual file name .mp3. That's still the technology behind a digital music file.
Yeah, and
in that regard.
And there was a period where everybody was talking about it, but ultimately, like with any technology, it receded to the background and it became more about what does it enable. The iPod moment, with 1,000 songs in your pocket. That was a game changer for Apple. And so what I'm seeing things going is I think NFTs are going to remain an incredibly important medium for digital culture, digital art, collectibles, membership passes, etc. But we are limiting ourselves and we're limiting the scope of coverage and the brand by limiting it to one medium, when this is about digital culture at large. The digital culture movement also includes fungible tokens. It also includes AI and creativity. It also includes, there's so many elements of that. What's happening on the policy side of things, like
you have to cover from all angles too. The core of it, it's ownership and creativity, and how does that translate across all of these different mediums? So when the rebrand there, was it met with any hesitation? Everyone's like, no, this is the logical path. We're going in the right direction here. Was that hard for you?
Look, it is always challenging to sunset or shift a successful brand, right? Because NFT Now undoubtedly was a successful brand in that space, right? It's niche, but it was known, it was trusted, and all of that.
There's credibility there.
And so originally we started by making the parent company Now Media, and we still had all of the accounts as NFT Now. There was
the sub-brands.
Yeah, exactly. But it quickly became clear that in order to really maximize the potential of the and continue to stay relevant and stay on top of the fast moving world of digital culture, we needed to broaden the scope of coverage, and we needed to broaden the brand. And so many of our brand partners, Now Media is such an easier sell than NFT Now.
Right. You're not pigeonholing yourself.
Right.
So you have the digital publication too, events that you guys know too. But what's next on the horizon? Do you see this getting back into the experiential world?
Yeah, absolutely. So,
like, what's next? I mean, people aren't going to NFT conferences anymore, but what we are doing, they look at Complex Con. You look at some of these other cultural kind of movements here. Where are you going to be?
Yeah. So, in June, we did an official launch for the new Now Media site, new franchises, newsletter franchises like Luminaries, which is the one that I head up. It's like weekly deep dive profiles on movers and shakers in the space. My co-founder Ale has one called In the Flow for policy, the intersection of crypto and technology and policy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's a new membership model. And so one of the things that's really interesting is that it's important to understand that the Now Media rebrand is more than just cosmetic. It's a totally different way of us creating content and approaching that content, because these days people trust people over brands. And so back in the day at NFT Now, you might have a senior editor writing the NFT Now newsletter. I would approve it or, that, but like it was about NFT Now or Now Media in your inbox. Now it's about Matt Medved in your inbox. Now it's about Matt Medved interviewing these people. We found that that's what people really gravitate towards. They gravitate more towards the people.
A creator, as the creator's name is the brand.
Right.
Yeah.
And so Now Media is the vehicle for that. But so that's really important. And then to your question about experiential, we did for our launch event, we did a launch event at Pier 59 Studios at Chelsea Piers. We took over the biggest screen on the East Coast and did an entire audiovisual, interactive, immersive art showcase to recognize and to celebrate the launch.
It's not going anywhere.
That's right.
The other fascinating piece that I've seen, just ancillary, and it's definitely related too, is I guess the reemergence of just collectibles in general. We've seen with sports cards. We've seen, especially around the trading cards too. I mean, if you see with Gary V's like V-Friends and the cards from that perspective, and I'm seeing individuals create cards too. And I think there's this resurgence of collectability.
Yeah.
Right. But that goes back to core kind of like when we were kids too. I don't know if you're a baseball card guy too, but we collect things. And you look at like Labubu's now that my little guy has too.
Yeah.
People like to hold things. And if you're able to create that world, because we all live in the digital world, it's not even the digital world. It's ubiquitous. This is the world we live in, where you have physical and digital too, and you're able to combine those things together. It's created a whole new universe of a new generation of collectors, and it's great to see. So like my 7-year-old too, I embrace it. Like, you want to spend your money on that? Like, I can't be a parent and be like, no, save your money for college. No, just go have fucking fun. Like, why do you love it? Like, he even opened up. What did he do the other day? My mother-in-law bought him a pack of baseball cards, and the first thing in my head is like, his little rough little 7-year-old fingers there. I'm like, no, be careful there. That could be like an ultra rare card. I'm like, just rip it open and have fun with it, right? Like, what gets you excited? What brings you back to that intrinsic childhood like fun element to this world? Like, what gets you excited?
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that like collecting and curating, there are some elements of overlap there, which is like understanding where value comes from, understanding and appreciating cultural relevance, rarity, scarcity, fandom, these powerful forces. When, in the early days of NFTs, when I was going on every podcast imaginable trying to explain to people what they were, baseball cards were the analogy I used, because if at the end of the day, we have accepted that, a piece of paper that cost less than 5 cents to make could be sold for $5 million if it's Mickey Mantle and it's from the right year. And it's not about that piece of paper, it's about what it represents, right?
And the rarity of it.
So that's why I'm so bullish on digital assets, especially unique digital assets, whether they're NFTs or not, because at the end of the day, we as a culture are not going to stop valuing things for all of those factors I mentioned, like emotional resonance, cultural relevance, rarity, scarcity, history, fandom, etc. And as we lead more of our lives digitally, we are only going to continue to collect things in a digital sphere. And so I think the craze around Pokemon cards, I think that, which I collected as a kid, magic cards, all of that.
It's always been there. That
it's
element.
always been there.
It's excitement.
And we're going to see more and more of it happen digitally, whether it's on Roblox or whether it's on the blockchains.
Right. I mean, we talk about it all the time. Like people like, I would never buy something digitally, and be like, all right, do your kids use Roblox or Minecraft? Like you guys are buying,
Right.
these inanimate objects that live in the digital world that have rarity and scarcity to them. So we talk about AI too, and I want to shift a little the conversation, but I'm very curious to your thoughts. It's a very high level kind of thought here. You know, is this advancement in AI and these AI interactions? We
Yeah.
see the craziest one that I saw recently was this app that has your AI dating profile going out in an agentic way, dating other AI agent agentic profiles and seeing if there's a match before two people even
Yeah.
meet. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Would you ever try that? I mean, now you're in a relationship,
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
Matt's not doing anything.
I'm off the market right now,
He's
but,
going down to
know.
North Carolina to meet the parents, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't surprise me to see that, and I think that like if I were still single, I wouldn't be opposed to trying it, because I think that technology, as I said, has always driven society forward, right? So back in the day, you were limited by in terms of finding a potential match, you were limited by your own social network, and walking into a bar or walking into a restaurant, and
or arranged marriages,
right? But again, it's like, who's in the same space as you. Obviously, dating apps created, I know a lot of people who have
I met my wife on JDate.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No,
It's amazing.
That's how we.
Yeah.
It was the intermediary. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been connected unless we ran into each other at a bar.
And what are the chances of that? Why wouldn't you use technology to optimize for success, to ensure that dating isn't, especially in New York, dating is not cheap, and it takes time. So why would you go through all those reps on without positioning yourself for success? Why would you choose a less efficient route? And so to me, it's just smarter. It's just dating smarter, right? And so, all right, you knew that, for example, on JDate, you knew that a Jewish spouse was important to you. So, fellow member of the tribe, and so at the end of the day, you were setting yourself up for success there, because you knew that the people that you would connect with there already checked that box, right? And then
it's just the next evolution of that.
Yeah, and you can start to then be like around shared interests. So to me, the AI agent leap, while it sounds dystopian at first glance, it's just a natural evolution of maximizing efficiency around this process, and that's what AI is doing across every category.
Right, but listen, we're moving very fast with it. And,
very fast.
I mean, the speed of adoption is incredible there, right? But there's got to be the parts where we need to pump the brakes. Is there one specific area that you would like to see to pump the brakes on? Is it coming from the creative art side? Are you seeing it more from the the information side? Like where would you like to see the brakes pumped a little bit, or maybe not at all?
Honestly, man, I'm not really a pump the brakes kind of guy. I think that technology, is important. Like innovation is important. Obviously, with certain guardrails, certain regulations, I think it's important. To me, it's not about slowing innovation. It's about speeding up regulation and speeding up legislation and getting the laws and the books and the organizing bodies hip to what's happening. And so that they can keep up, rather than slowing innovation.
Well, this is an interesting one. Tell me, let's bring it back to music here.
Yeah.
Right. On my train ride into the city today, I prompted through more than one prompt to create a rap song about a recent health situation battle I've been going through too. And I kept going and iterating, and I'm like, it came out to really good lyrics here too. Is that taking away from the art form of true writer? Because now I could take that song, and I guarantee you there's a ton of artists right there that we know that are using some kind of writing technology to create there. Is that taken away from the true art form, and we taken away from the soul of creativity?
I mean, look, if you...
Music specifically.
Yeah, look, if all you do is do a formulaic ChatGPT output and then throw that into Suno and then export it and upload it and be like, that's my art. I mean, yeah, that's going to sound formulaic, derivative, and that's going to be AI. That's the AI slop of music, right?
But those things are popular right now.
Yeah,
those are a subset.
Sure, right? But to me, it isn't about just about that. It's about what this technology enables. It's not about it replacing the process. It's about it enhancing the process. So to me, I view AI as a songwriting partner. So I'm still writing the lyrics. I'm still, but I
The
might hit
ideas and
I
the
might hit a writer's
creativity.
block. I might be like, wait, like what's a good line here? I'm like, I've got this. What rhymes with this? Before I would go on like Rhyme Zone and find like words that rhyme. Like I
We
would
used
like
to
try
call
and
it a
a
thesaurus.
thesaurus, right? But here I could be like, hey, like what are your thoughts? Okay, give me some more options. Okay, and that I might not even use that, but it may
It
trigger an
may open
idea.
an idea for
May
other.
trigger an
So
idea,
it goes
and
back to
then
using it as a tool and
yeah.
not a crutch.
Exactly. Tool, not a crutch. And that again, like I always say, AI really isn't going to replace those artists. It's artists who know how to leverage AI, who are going to be more efficient, punch above their weight class,
Right.
and create things. So like to me, again, AI is just another tool.
But
It's just another
hopefully,
tool.
but hopefully we're not untraining the discerning ears who really care about lyrics and music and everything, and just going with a formulaic approach because that's what pop music is.
I mean,
Like, that's scary.
I think in the next 5-10 years, AI is going to be a part of every songwriter and producer's arsenal. They're going to use it to varying degrees, and the artists who are actually successful are going to be the ones who figure out how to leverage that technology to enhance and augment their own innate creativity and create incredible music that sounds human, that is distinctly them, but they're doing it faster, they're doing it more efficiently, they can do it at scale, and ultimately, they are leveraging the tools of our time to create great art. And here's the thing: if it catches on, which it will, like we're gonna have AI generated hits very
Well,
very
that's
soon.
where I was going
Yeah,
with this one, man.
yeah,
It's happening out there, and you could do it with those tools.
yeah.
There's enough of a library of a current modern artist where they could different tonality within the voice too, and plus manipulate it digitally, where they just prompt it.
Yeah, yeah. And like here, look, at the end of the day, the way I see it with my own music, I see it as creating demos.
And just singing.
I'm still gonna want to go get a real vocalist to record it.
You could
But
try
like as a
something.
songwriter, I have these songs in my head. Why not be able to get it out of my head into a workable demo, with an AI vocal on Suno, with an arrangement, and then we can go in there. I mean, as a musician, as a music producer myself, somebody who knows his way around Ableton, who knows, who's
Right.
produced and released tracks and
You've
remixed
done this
major
before.
artists and all that. To me, it's a huge unlock because it's like I can now, if I hear a sound in my head, I can create it. It's like creating my own sample packs. And for me, the exciting thing isn't hitting, and I use Suno, love Suno. I'm actually interviewing the CEO of Suno for our Luminary series. And, for me, it's not about hitting generate, putting it down, and then just being like, here's my track.
No, no, no,
It's
no, no.
about using it to create loops, tools, different things, break it into stems, bring that into Ableton, add my own things, take this, twist it, add it something. But it's
Well, it's
just
opened
like,
up a whole new creative
yeah,
process for you as an artist and somebody out there where now I could expand where I could. You literally hit the nail on the head right there. How do I 10x my brain and my output?
yes, exactly.
And if you think about it that way, that is the tech optimist viewpoint. So
Absolutely.
Matt, what's keeping you up at night these days?
Well, I mean, look, uh, keeping me up at night these days. Look, I do think that we're losing the human connection in many things. Again, as a techno optimist, I recognize that these concerns can be seen as contradictory, but I don't see it that way. I think it's important to like maintain the human connection. I feel like I'm seeing a lot of echo chambers. I'm seeing a lot of people, doing whatever it takes to succeed in algorithms, and becoming less and less human, less and less empathetic every
Yeah, I
day.
agree with you on that one.
I mean, look, I feel like, obviously Twitter is ground zero for crypto, right? That platform has changed considerably in terms of the algorithm, in terms of the content that succeeds on it, in terms of what's being
The
amplified.
ownership change made a difference too.
Yeah, it did. And, to me, that having to log in there every day and create there is more challenging than it was, during 2021
Right.
at Boom. And so, and just navigating the very fast moving markets. Look, I always knew that we would go into a bear market and that it
It's
would take
cyclical.
time.
You
It's
understand. You've been
cyclical.
around long enough.
But I also I did think that we would be that unique digital assets like NFTs, et cetera, digital art would be in a bit more of a bull market than they have been in this cycle. This has been a really atypical cycle. It's been a really interesting cycle because this has been an institutionally driven cycle, not a retail driven cycle.
Right, but when we talk about cycles too, we're still in such an infant timeline of this whole
Yeah.
world
Yeah.
that we don't know what the cycles are going to be from that standpoint. I want to close out talking about legacy too, and we're not getting any younger here too,
Yeah.
right? You're building something here for real, right? With Now Media, and what does that look like? Like, is this? Do you think that this is going to be forever, or do you anticipate some more pivots coming down the road?
Look, I mean, I don't. I think it's. I think in an industry and in a space that evolves so quickly, you can almost never say that anything is forever, right?
Of course.
Because things are always changing, and you're always, evolving to keep up with what's
But
happening.
what I mean though is like, sorry, let me
Yeah,
reframe that for a moment. You've been doing your own thing for a while now,
yeah.
right? Like, embracing this as well too. Continuing to build, continuing to create, and continuing to be that tastemaker. Is that going to be your legacy?
Look, I do think I'm always going to continue to create. I do think I'm always going to continue to curate. I do think I'm always going to continue to tell really important stories I think matter, and empower artists and empower creatives and empower people who I think are making a positive impact. That the mediums may change, the forums may change, the ways that we do this may change, but I know that that's something that's like central and core to who I am. But I have a lot of different ambitions, and one of the things that I love about Now Media is, since we broadened it, is that anything at the intersection of like digital culture, it fits into the wheelhouse. So for example, I've been really deep on the generative AI music side of things, and back when we were NFT Now, I couldn't really interview the CEO of Suno.
Right.
I couldn't really write
Right.
about that. Now I can. So like, there's a lot of things that, one of the great things about the brand is that it's about now, right? And so
It's
no
in the
matter
name.
what that is, it's gonna be current.
So leave us here with some advice to young creators out there. For the trying to find their identity in this world where AI is really pulling into this homogenous world where, people are going to look the same and everything, but like, what advice would you give them to stay true to who they are?
Yeah, I think it's about finding your own unique voice. I know that's easy to say, hard to do, and then figuring out how to leverage tools to do the most with that. Whether that's if you're a creator, whether that's leveraging what you're creating across many different platforms, whether that's using AI to be more productive, whether that's kind of finding that niche. I think for a lot of people, like we always say, niches are riches. I think that's really important. I think finding something that you are genuinely passionate about to tell stories around and to create content around, because you can't fake it. And
Yeah.
if you do fake it, people can tell.
And if you can make a couple bucks while you're doing it,
Yeah,
even better.
absolutely.
Matt, leave us with the greatest piece of career advice that you've ever received. You've had, you look back on your career. It's a
Yeah.
journey. It's an arc. It's a complete arc, and it's fascinating. And first and foremost, I want to thank you for your time and being
course.
here,
Thanks
and your
for having
wisdom, and always being kind of my source of what's happening in the now. Certainly, pun intended there. But when you think about the advice that you've received through your career, was there that one person, that one mentor that said something that just sticks in your head that you, I would say, almost repeat daily?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll take it full circle back to Nigeria, where we started. Cham Bagu, who was the country director for Nigeria for Search for Common Ground, legendary guy, great mentor of mine, very, very wise community leader, all the things. He gave me. I remember coming to him for advice. I was going through kind of like a challenging time, and I asked him for what were some of his guiding principles, and he was like, real simple, two things: stay open, don't force things. And I just loved how he boiled it down to two very simple things to think about. And when I think about my career, staying open to things and not forcing things has been such a really important kind of like gut checklist for me, where if something if something feels uncomfortable, I'll ask myself, like, am I being open right now? Am I being open, or am I being closed off to it, or am I being open? And if I'm like, yeah, you know what, I've been open to this, but it's just not working, it doesn't feel right, all that, I'm not going to force it.
That is sage advice. Matt Medved, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast. I want everyone to check out nowmedia.co /subscribe. We're going to link it up in the show notes. Where else could folks find you? Where could they connect? Where could they learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. My personal stuff is all at Matt Medved on the Web 2 platforms, and probably at Medved on the Web 3 ones, and at Now Media across everything for our socials for Now Media. As I said, we'd love to welcome you to our subscriber base and getting involved with our community.
Well, definitely check it out I want to thank everyone for joining us here on this episode of the podcast. You know where to find out more at thepodcast.com. Follow us on all the social media channels. You know they are. They're linked up below. Remember, be good to yourself, be better to others, and catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast. Take care, everybody. That's how we do it.